And as that such, he was sort of a cowardly killer. He was not the kind of person who would go up behind somebody and slit their throats or something like that.
The story revolves around the chilling and true-life tale of Herman W. Mudgett, famously known as H. Holmes. Born in 1860, the story is a gripping exploration of a criminal mind, unmasking evil and revealing the horrors hidden behind the facade of a charming and brilliant man, leaving an indelible mark on the annals of criminal history. Welcome to Narrative Neek. Herman Mudgett actually spent his early days on a farm near Burlington. Now, here's where it gets interesting. He wasn't your average young man. In fact, he was exceptionally bright, ambitious, and studious. Can you believe that by the age of 16, he had already become a school teacher? But wait, there's more. On July 4, 1878, at just 18 years old, he did something even more remarkable. He got married. He wed Clara A. Lovering in Alton, NH. And guess what? Right around this time, he made a rather bold decision. He gave up his teaching gig to pursue a course in a medical school at Burlington, VT. A year later, he completed his course at this medical school, and then took things up a notch. He went to Ann Arbor College in Michigan to further his education. In 1881, Mudgett came into possession of a body that looked strikingly similar to one of his closest friends and fellow students. Now, this friend had recently taken out a life insurance policy worth a whopping $1,000, with Mudgett as the beneficiary. What Mudgett and his friend did next: they discreetly placed this body in the bed of Mudgett's friend, who mysteriously vanished. There seemed to be little to no investigation into this peculiar case. Mudgett ended up collecting the insurance money without a hitch, and it's presumed that he shared the spoils with his deceased friend. Mudgett, now using the alias Holmes, embarked on a series of incredible adventures. In 1885 he moved to Chicago, where he got a job working at a pharmacy under the alias Dr. Henry H. Holmes. When the owner of the drugstore passed away, he left his wife to take over the responsibilities of the store. However, Holmes convinced the widow to let him buy the store. The widow soon went missing and was never seen again. Holmes claimed that she moved to California, but this could never be verified. After Holmes had taken over the drugstore, he did something utterly sinister. He bought an empty lot right across the street and embarked on a horrifying project. This was no ordinary construction. He was crafting what would later be infamously known as the Murder Castle. During the construction phase in 1889, Holmes played a disturbing game of cat and mouse. He hired and fired multiple construction crews, ensuring that no one had a clear idea of what he was actually building within those walls. It was a place where the unimaginable would happen. By 1891, the castle was complete, and Holmes hatched a devious plan to lure unsuspecting victims. He placed enticing ads in newspapers, offering job opportunities to young women and promoting the castle as the comfortable lodging establishment. But that wasn't all. He even advertised himself as a wealthy suitor searching for a wife. Holmes had a sick requirement for anyone connected to him. Employees, hotel guests, fiancés, and even wives had to have life insurance policies. The catch was that Holmes paid the insurance premiums, but there was a chilling condition: they had to name him as the beneficiary. As you can probably guess, most of the women who became his fiancées or wives mysteriously vanished, along with a disturbing number of his employees and guests. People living nearby began to notice something deeply unsettling. They would see women entering the castle, but not a single one of them would ever emerge from those sinister walls. It was as if they had entered a dark abyss, from which there was no return. In 1893, Chicago was given the honor of hosting the World's Fair, the cultural and social event to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's discovery of America. The event was scheduled from May to October and attracted millions of people from all over the world. When Holmes heard that the World's Fair was coming to Chicago, he looked at it as an opportunity. He knew many visitors would be searching for lodging near the fair, and believed many of them would be women whom he could easily seduce into staying at his hotel. After being lured into the hotel, many of these out-of-town visitors would never be seen again. The first floor of the castle had several stores. The two upper levels contained Holmes' office, and over 100 rooms that were used as living quarters. Some of these rooms were soundproof and contained gas lines so that Holmes could asphyxiate his guests whenever he felt like it. Throughout the building, there were trapdoors, peepholes, stairways that led nowhere, and chutes that led into the basement. The basement was designed as Holmes' own lab. It had a dissecting table, stretching rack, and crematory. Sometimes he would send the bodies down the chute, dissect them, strip them of the flesh, and sell them as human skeleton models to medical schools. In other cases, he would choose to cremate or place the bodies into pits of acids. On August 13, 1893, the third floor of Holmes' building caught fire. Luckily, only a few people were in the building. All employees and long-term residents who were able to get out. Holmes had taken out insurance policies on the building with at least 4 companies, all of which promptly sued rather than pay, with insurance companies pressing to prosecute Holmes for arson. Holmes left Chicago in July 1894. He reappeared in Fort Worth, looking to build on the property that Minnie Williams had transferred. That same month, however, he was arrested and briefly incarcerated for the first time on the charge of selling mortgaged goods in St. Louis, Missouri. While Holmes was behind bars, he came up with a chilling new insurance scheme. He teamed up with his cellmate, Marion Hedgepeth, and together they hatched a plan. Holmes decided he'd take out a hefty $10,000 insurance policy on himself, then stage his own death. The twist: he promised Hedgepeth $500 in return for securing a lawyer who could help him if things went awry. Now, fast forward a bit. Holmes was released from jail on bail, and he wasted no time in putting his plan into action. But the insurance company got suspicious and refused to pay up. Holmes, undeterred, shifted his scheme to Philadelphia. This time, though, he had Benjamin Pitezel, his accomplice, fake his own death. But gruesome Holmes didn't stop at fakery. He actually killed Pitezel and pocketed the insurance money for himself. In 1894, Marion Hedgepeth, who didn't get a dime from the initial scam, decided he'd had enough. He spilled the beans to the police about Holmes. The law finally caught up to Holmes, apprehending him in Boston, where they slapped him with an outstanding warrant related to a swindle involving Texas horses. It was the beginning of the end for this diabolical figure, with Holmes behind bars. Chicago police began to investigate Holmes' building. The ground floor of the building was divided into ordinary retail spaces. The third floor consisted of apartments, offices, and Holmes' living quarters. But on the second floor and basement, they discovered an elaborate house of horrors. The basement held a crematorium, a blood-spattered dissection table, vats of acid, surgical implements, various jars of poison, pits of quicklime, and torture devices attached to the walls. Holmes is thought to have stripped many of the bodies down to their skeletons in order to sell them for medical study. Not only did they find the equipment to produce evil, but they also found large quantities of human bones, tufts of hair, blood-stained linen, and pieces of clothing that appeared to have been hastily concealed. Portions of bodies were so badly dismembered and decomposed that it was hard for them to determine exactly how many bodies there really were. The building soon became known as the Murder Castle. The police investigation spread through Chicago, Indianapolis, and Toronto. While conducting their investigation in Toronto, police discovered the bodies of the Pitezel children, who had gone missing sometime during Holmes' insurance fraud spree, linking Holmes to their murders. He was convicted of their murders. He also confessed to 28 other murders. However, through investigations and missing persons reports, it is believed that Holmes is responsible for up to 200 murders. In May 1896, H. Holmes, one of America's earliest and most notorious serial killers, met his end on the gallows. The reign of terror he had unleashed came to a gruesome conclusion. But the creepy thing is, the castle, that notorious den of horrors where Holmes had committed his unspeakable acts, took on a new, sinister life of its own. It was transformed into an attraction, a macabre testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. They called it the Holmes Horror Castle. However, fate had one last twist in store for this dreadful place. Just before it was set to open its doors to the curious and the brave, disaster struck. The castle, a symbol of Holmes' malevolence, burned to the ground, perhaps as if the very walls themselves couldn't bear to hold on to the dark secrets any longer. Thanks for watching.